Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. My name is Apostle Aladdin, and I've been away from live streaming for a little bit, but I'm back again. So, welcome back to the show, and excuse me if I'm a little bit rusty. So, I'm taking callers today. Link is pinned to the live chat if you would like to join. Otherwise, welcome as a viewer. So today's live stream, I'm going to be taking callers from all sorts of backgrounds, and I already have one caller lined up. But like I said, if you'd like to join, please feel free to click that link. As always, I'm joined by my cat, Apu. He's always there in the corner. And while we wait for other callers to join the queue, like I said, it's pretty empty right now. I'll be taking the first caller. So I hope the first caller is ready, because I'm adding you in a few seconds. So hey, Den. How's it going, Den?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Not too bad. Hey, I've actually been meaning to get on the show for a while, but it's a little unnerving, so I hope you don't mind that.
Well, yeah, there's no need to be nervous. I'm happy that you're here. And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you here.
Yeah, sure. So, I've left the faith a long time ago, and basically I am an ex-Muslim. I was Muslim before, and then I spent time and I thought about, the questions and all that, and nothing really seemed to line up. I always came at it from a sort of defensive stance, and I was always looking to like answer my doubts, and the answers never really made sense to me. So eventually I found myself finding alternative answers that did make more sense, and I was like, oh, this is looking more and more man-made until eventually there was no one big thing. It's always a bunch of little things that add up. Um, But yeah, I mean, the reason why I called in today is not really to discuss those points. I was sort of asking, I wanted to know, what do you think the future is going to look like? Because I come from an Arab background, and well, one thing that's got to me is that I sort of want to find community, but community is very difficult because I'm in like this weird situation, right? All of the Arab language is like very religious. You have the Insha'Allah, Jazakallah khair, and all those little sayings where I find it very difficult. Like if you want to I mean, for me, I don't want to say all that stuff. So if I try, like, but I can't find a secular alternative. So I don't know if I'm like ostracizing myself or, do you have any thoughts on this kind of secularization?
Well, I'm glad that you specified the question a little bit because you start off with, what do you think about the future or something like that, which I
Mm,
cannot answer. um, I get where you're coming from. I'm in the same boat. On one hand, sometimes when you use language that is specifically, intentionally not religious, it's almost like you're going out of your way to use it, and people might pick up on that. I think, but at the same time, maybe if it's gradual enough, then it'll just become the norm. I mean, I don't try to go out of my way to not use those words. I still use them every now and then, but for the most part, I've found other words to say. And I think that's just the first step to take in that direction.
mm.
Because most people don't actually mean it with a religious context all the time. So instead of analyzing whether they do or do not, just most of the time I use other words if I can. If it's too complex, I just use the same word.
Yeah, I get you. So I could kind of mirror it with like in English you have oh my God, right? And not like you have atheists say oh my God. They don't really mean anything by it. The one that really sticks out to me, the one that I have a difficult time with is like when somebody's passed away, they're referring to somebody who's dead. People will like always say Allah yarhamu, meaning like God have mercy on them. And I'm like, I think like that's like for me the most overtly religious one, and that's the one that I say it not because I believe it, but because like it's a comfort for the person saying it. You know what I mean? I'm not like advocating for a position there.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because may God have mercy on their soul is, to be honest, to me, a depressing thing to say to someone. Like, from my point of view, knowing what I know now or how I think now, I'm sure a lot of people take it well if you tell them, "May God have mercy on your soul." But for me, it would be a reminder of, oh wait, so there is a God who may or may not have mercy on this person's soul, and my prayer might have something to do with how merciful God is or how savage God is with that person. I don't personally, I don't think it's the nicest thing to say to someone, but I get where you're coming from. If it's about how they perceive it, so if they would perceive it as a good thing, then I suppose it's nice to tell them that. It's just like how I don't burst people's bubbles and say, well, there's no heaven anyway, so your loved one is just dead. Um, but part of me in the back of my head is thinking, what if the person doesn't want to be reminded of how their loved one is now going to face God?
Right.
I don't
No.
know. Yeah.
I get you. For me, it's like a reactionary thing. I never bring it up to begin with. It's always like somebody else would bring it up, and then
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, now I'm in this position. Now I gotta respond. Because you
Right.
could sit there silently, but it kind of makes you look like a douche, you know?
I mean, what else can you say? They're in a better place now, or I mean, that's the same, same vein. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, it's so yeah, those kinds of things. I feel like like in a more broad sense, like I feel like it's harder for me to fit in with that kind of Muslim background. But at the same time, I also find myself struggling to fit in with, so right now I'm living in a Western country, but I also find myself struggling to fit there because the people around you sort of don't understand the kind of control or the amount of like influence that this had in your life, and like how stepping away from it, you know, puts a lot on you, or it shapes your mentality in a way that I find it very difficult to relate to. And the only like people that I found that I could relate to are people who also detransitioned or also like deconverted from a high control religion. And it's they don't really advertise it. It's something that you have to discover.
Yeah. That's something that I'm struggling with too. Identity.
Hmm.
I mean, part of it is
Yeah.
it doesn't help that at the same time when we get accusations of, for example, being self-hating or hating your own people or something of the sort, which is not at all what you're describing, not where it sounds like you're coming from. It's just that if you don't fit in with your people, and often if your people knew who you really are, and by really are, I just mean, you don't believe the same thing as them, they don't really feel like you're one of them. Um, on the other hand, you don't feel like you're one of the other people that you didn't grow up with necessarily, or maybe not from the same racial background or ex-religious beliefs. Like you said, it seems like it's mostly among people who have went through a similar experience, even if it's not Islam, that you can sort of relate more closely. But I find that as long as you have like that core group of people who understand what that part of your life is about, then the rest you can have other sorts of relationships that they don't have to know you that deeply, I suppose, or that side of you. I'm not sure I'm adding anything to what you're
No,
saying.
no, no, that's perfectly fine. I do like I think that yeah, it's something that everybody sort of has to go through. And like here's the ultimate kicker, right? Like I find myself like not interested in a lot of ex-Muslim communities. Like they skew younger. I find I'm a little bit more like older, and I think that I've kind of experienced a little bit more in life, and I've had more distance ever since the deconversion. Like I've had more time, so I've sort of mellowed out and gotten that. But like when I enter these communities, I feel like everybody's still like full of fire and passion, and it's understandable, right? I was at that point myself, but like I even from those communities, I find myself not really having a home. So it's really not a good spot. But we do this a step at a time. I do find that you go out, you put yourself out there, you find interest. This isn't like the central defining thing for me in my life. Um, like it's not like, oh, I need to be people who have experienced exactly this, but um, I don't know. It it definitely does shape your outlook on life. And I guess what it is you want to feel that you've got like people who get you. They don't need to know everything about you, but like you feel like home. And that's something that I'm sort of been trying to find, like a little home. Um, you're probably, you're not the one that's going to give that to me, but
I
I just
mean,
wanted to
you
like,
shot me down
yeah.
before I even tried, so I can't.
Sorry about that.
No, I feel the same way, and what you said about, for example, the zeal and the energy that some new or fresh or younger ex-Muslims, let's call them that, have. Um, I felt the same thing too. I mean, I went through that stage of my life at first, and then the more that I became vocal and felt like, okay, I have a lot of my thoughts out there already, and the more that I matured with them, the less that I felt like spending my time bonding, outside of right now what I'm doing is in a sense work, but outside of that, I don't hang out in a lot of ex-Muslim spaces. I'm hoping for, and maybe hopefully I'll someday help initiate some kind of community that, while it does have that as an initiator, as a lot of people have that kind of background, it's not really the focus of what the activities are about or forming connections. Um, that's something that I hope to see someday. And you know what? Every now and then I run into an Arab person out in the wild who seems just the right ratio of haram for me to ask the. It's you can kind of sense it, in the way that they talk or dress or the opinions that they have. And going forward, your friendship or relationship doesn't have to be about the fact that you're both ex-Muslims, but you can just do regular things, and that context helps you both out. Um,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, yeah.
that doesn't help people who have a difficulty finding the ex-Muslims to begin with. I recognize that. Um, Maybe also by letting the existence of ex-Muslims be more known in the mainstream, then strangers who haven't gone through such a thing might be able to better feel like home to us, if they know, some kind of idea about where we come from.
Hmm. Which is actually like why once I discovered you, I was very happy because you did bring that kind of calmness, not that kind of vigor. And so it did feel like a place that was more comfortable, more, you could kind of be yourself a little bit more. And I'm sure that other colors probably feel that way as well. Um, but yeah, I do know a few people in real life. It's just the problem is always how much do you expose? When do you expose that kind of thing? So you don't like push people away or give the wrong impression. But yeah, I do know like a few ex-Muslims in my life. And those kinds of bonds, I feel are more meaningful to me. But it's just that they're not like I'm not in contact with them all the time. So I'm sort of, like my baseline is sort of isolated, but then I have those brief moments of like, okay, there's a like a deeper bond here. Um, I mean, it's something that'll get worked out as more people are comfortable, I
Mhm.
think. Yeah.
I
Um,
mean, I feel like I have a lot of I have a lot of, not to say shallower, but not as deep connections with a lot more people, and then a select few that are closer or that I can talk to about specific things. So I feel like it's maybe diversify is what I'm saying. This is not really advice about investment, but in terms of relationships and friendships, maybe we can't get them all, or can't get that level of connection from the average person that we meet. But if you can diversify the kind of friendships that you have, and then also have the select few that are a bit closer, that could work out. But I feel like we would probably feel at home more, I mean, talking personally here, if I didn't have to explain the story from the beginning to each person. And by that, I don't mean the story of my life, but just that little bit of context in a conversation, like, oh yeah, my name is this, but I'm not a Muslim, and this happens. hopefully when we get to that point in the future, it'll be a lot easier.
I hope so too. Well, I'm not going to take too much of your time. It was fun, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I hope to see you around. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye. So thanks to the first caller, Den, for joining us. Seems like we've got a few people in queue, but not a lot of them have yet been queued up, so to speak. But we do have a caller that is ready. Syd, I hope you're ready, because in a few moments I will take your call. So something to note for people who don't know, I recently started a Discord server for patrons and YouTube members, and it has helped me immensely already, and it's growing so fast. And it's so far it's been kept to membership through through Patreon and YouTube to limit the influx of people going into the server. But it's been a lot of fun, and if you'd like to join, if you'd like to be part of that small but growing community, feel free to inquire in the comments, or just become a member or a patron, and you will be able to join. And thank you for the reminder, Homo sapien. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and helps the live streams be advertised to more people. Since I haven't been doing this regularly for a while, I feel like I do need a bit of a head start. So any help you can give me that way would be much appreciated. Okay, so Syd, I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey Syd, how's it going? Can you hear me? Syd, I think you have YouTube playing in the background. Okay. I think you need to mute your YouTube, and then I'll be able to hear you. So, are you ready? Okay. Syd is still watching YouTube in the background, so
Maybe
I'm not sure if I'll be able to add her. Okay, I'm hearing my own voice. Yeah, unfortunately, Syd, I can't hear you if my voice is in the background, so I'll have to move on to the next caller if someone is ready. In the meantime, I'll take some questions or comments to highlight while we're waiting for a next caller. Yeah, Imran says, oh wow, just noticed you have an audio only thing now. Nice. Yeah, so now all callers can join by audio only and no video option, except maybe every now and then I will do live streams where I prepared callers that I've spoken to before or something of that sort. But for the time being, it's just audio. I wonder, Syd, is that actually you who is trying to join the live stream or not? I see you in the live chat. Do let us know if that's really you. In the meantime, sorry, you guys, I've been a bit rusty. Let me know in the comments what you would like me to talk about next. So I am working on a video right now, a very short video about something that Yasir Qadi had said about whether you can pray for dead people, which is the most bizarre thing. So for those who don't know, in Islam, you're not allowed to pray to God for mercy if some non-Muslim died, which is very bizarre. And I'll be citing the sources for that too. And I think Yasir Qadi takes a bit of a, like, it's a traditional approach, but also a little bit softer, where he says, yeah, you're not allowed to pray for them because that's obviously what the verse says, but you can wish it in your heart. But some people don't like him saying that. But I find it very funny that God would even care whether you pray for someone or not. It's not like God is obliged to then have mercy on someone just because you prayed for them. But yeah, that's funny. I might get into that in a video tomorrow. Homo sapien says, that really messed with my mind as a Muslim. Yeah, there's a lot of those. Myra says, what are some of your favorite / impactful cult documentaries? I've always found them fascinating, probably because they're so relatable. I don't know if I can quote off the top of my head names of anything, let alone specific documentaries, but I could tell you I've watched a bunch of them that are on Netflix, and I've told this before. One time when I watched a few of them, it was in the past, before I officially left Islam, so to speak, or officially realized I don't actually believe. I remember how bizarre it is watching the main cult leader dictate what he wants to do and how, and I was thinking to myself, everything this guy is saying pretty much applies to Muhammad. What's the difference? Well, no, Muhammad is special. Muhammad had miracles, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you watch cult documentaries, and I can't recommend any off the top of my head, but watch pretty much any of them, you will see the parallels between your religion and that cult. I feel like the formula was cult plus time equals religion, or something of that sort. Let's see. Myra says, a recent favorite of mine is Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. I think I tried watching it, but I was not in a good headspace at the time, and I didn't feel like taking work home, so to speak, so I didn't continue. But if Myra recommends it, then I recommend that people check it out. So, okay, says, Aladdin, what do you think about the Quran verse which talks about Allah holding up the sky lest it falls down on us? I can't cite the verse off the top of my head, but I remember that it was about holding up the sky with pillars. I think that it's indicative of how seemingly the author didn't quite understand what the sky was. Like, the author thought it was a solid object, in the same way that, or that it was like a one object, rather than that Earth is the object and the sky is everything else that we can see and beyond. Some of it, a lot of it we can't see, or most of it we can't. So the way that the author describes creation and the timeline of it, and how things are held up, or that mountains hold the ground down and things of that sort, it seems like the author doesn't quite understand the reality of the physics of this world. So that's my thought on that. Another recommendation by Potato Apostato for Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey, very relatable to Islam. I suppose you should check it out. And to answer this commenter, is it the one with the guru from India? I did watch that one. Okay, thanks for reminding me. That is one of the ones that I watched before I left Islam. It is on Netflix, and I think it's called Wild Country, or there's wild in the name, and that's also a good one. I recommend that you watch it. Syd, yeah, you could try again, just to please. Yeah, Hassan Adwan is citing that verse. يمسك السماء أن تقع على الأرض. There was something else about pillars and the sky, or am I thinking of a different verse? Anyway, Syd, yeah, you can join again. I will add you to the live stream now. Just please have your YouTube muted. Let's give it a try. Hey, Syd, can you hear me? Hello? Are you there? Oh, sorry, I muted you. No, I'm just hearing a lot of noise in my own voice, Syd. So unfortunately, I don't think that's working.
I'm so sorry.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm figuring out this Discord now. I think I figured it out.
No worries. I think I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey.
How are you? How are you doing?
I am good, thanks. What about yourself?
I had a pretty rough months. Couple of last months were pretty rough, but better.
I'm happy
still
to hear
going.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just I was missing out a lot on your live stream, and it's really upsetting because it's always a highlight of a week. Once a week, even though I don't get to be part of the stream, just listening to people, chatting to people, all the lovely members over here and the friends I've got. It's 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 kind of like you know, having a relaxed, chill, you know, uh, something to look forward to throughout the week. But my condition went so bad, so I couldn't continue for a couple of weeks. And then I heard multiple very unfortunate incident happening, for which you, I believe, introduced this Discord service. I'm sorry, I'm not a very technical person, even though I should be, but I'm not. Uh,
No, you're
so
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you haven't been feeling well. I hope that you're feeling better now, and don't worry, you didn't miss much. Like you said, we had some technical difficulties in the past, but we're back now. Yeah, and I'm wondering, what do you
Well, I'm
what would you
happy.
like to talk about today? Yeah.
Okay, so from I always bring two sides of story, one my side of the story and one what's going on in the world right now, like as in an Islamic uh, traditional world. So let's start with one today that happened uh, actually on Monday. I my office actually snubbed me very bad. I was sick. I wasn't able to actually get out of my bed. I had the IV on and everything, so I was only able to go for like 2 to 3 days for a week, and that's pretty much it. And they didn't pay me the salary, so that's the whole another sad story. The funniest thing happened actually on Monday. Um, I take public transport uh, um, to work and back forth. Um, so what happened? I have this uniform. I have to wear this black top and jeans, and like I don't wear traditional shalwar kameez or jalabia or anything like that. But then there was another lady who was completely covered, like from head to toe. Okay, so and we were on the bus, and on the back of our seats, there were there was this scumbag was sitting, and he noticed both of us, but he realized he better not mess with me because I was extremely tired and I was already ready to murder someone. It maybe showed on my eyes or something. But then I started realizing that girl started moving from her on her seat from side to side, like she was very uncomfortable. And at one point she suddenly stood up, like we are like, the buses are brutally driven, and if someone stands up they're literally risking getting hurt. But she gets up, and the next thing I see is, I look at her, and immediately my instincts takes me back to the seat at the back, and there's a gap, and this guy's finger were trying to tackle her, and that poor girl was completely now head to toe covered. And not like I always complain about the hijabis or niqabis who do it for the sake of fashion and for the sake of show. No, but this lady was like properly like Sharia, or if you call it covered, and she was harassed. She was being harassed, and she was so scared. She didn't even speak up. She got up in a, I think, miles of speed riding bus, and she got up, stood up, and she didn't even say anything to anyone. But when I saw it, I realized it, and I was like, what are you doing, man? So not very nicely, and then I told the conductor that this man did this and that, and then it was like the conductor asked the lady if she if he did anything to her, and she was so scared, I think, and she said, no, 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 I'm fine. And that was still 20 minutes my home, and I had to suffer through it, and everyone was like judging me for making all out of nothing, and I was so
People were
mad
giving
at
you a
that.
hard time for standing up for the woman.
Yes, they were like, if she's not saying something, why I mean, obviously they're judging me, or like I always tell you, they judge me because the way I dress up and I look. And so even the women were like, hey, usko uski, her respect or her reputation can be damaged, or you shouldn't have said it something so loud. Like they were accusing me
Why would her reputation
for
be
standing,
damaged if a guy was harassing her?
because that's the mentality over here.
That's unfortunate.
Like if a guy does, essay you, or anyway, does something, it's always something women must have done. But then I will, like, when I came back home, like, even the women were like, वो बच्ची अपने आप को संभाल, oh, I'm saying it in Urdu. So the woman side, where they were like, oh, this girl is trying to protect herself from other men. She doesn't want them to know that that man was touching her or doing something to her, but you made it such a like big deal out of it. And I was like, that's not fine. And I asked that girl, was she okay? And she said she was okay, but she was shaken. I could see it, and something I can obviously resemble and understand immediately, like when something happens. Uh, so that was unfortunate. Uh,
I'm sorry
that's why I
for
really.
yeah, I'm sorry for what she went through and for the opposition you faced when you were trying to stand up for her.
Yeah, yeah, and then sometimes many people tell me, just mind your own business, and I'm like, how long till we mind our own businesses until someone finally do something? Like, if we keep mind, because we are taught from early age, if something happens to you, like something like this happens to you, even to me, it was taught by a family or Islamic family, that if a man does something to you, touches you in the wrong place, don't tell people, don't talk about it. But now, like, I'm so grown out of that phase that I'm trying to help other women. When I see one thing or something similar incident happening, it just brings that kind of like protective side of me, or I don't know what it is. Also, there's a new epidemia is happening in, especially in my city. You know my city and everything, so I'm not gonna name it. So, um, parents are actually poor, very poor parents are sending their very young girls. I'm talking about no more than 6 girls for begging in a very, very gritty, constructive site area where men, even I, someone who has built up such a confidence that if someone is staring at me, I would stare back at them until they look down. Even someone like me is scared to be around that area alone. But these little girls are over they're asking for food, money, and I'm out till evening at most. I don't know what happened after I come back home, and obviously sometimes these girls are still out there at night, and uh, th- there are I don't see any guardians or anyone looking for them. So I don't know what has
I mean,
happened. Maybe some
I really empathize with those girls, and I don't really know what to say.
there are
I
children.
Thing is though, like, is there anything that we can do about it, or is there anything that do you think that this has anything to do with religion in that instance?
Yes.
How does
So
this
one
relate to?
time, this lady. Yeah, I'm coming to it. So one time, I this kid, she was begging, and I told her, "Take me to your mom. I'll give you the money." And she took me to her and asked her, uh, "This is such a small child. Not even a girl. She's a child. And why are you like, you know?" And you're having more and more kids, and you're just sending it away. And then she said, "Oh, and looking at me again, judging me to be non-Muslim." And she said, "Oh, you are such a heretic. Our prophet said to increase our ummah as much as we can." And mostly whenever I bring up this topic, why do you have so many kids, this is the reason I get. But this is my point. The thing is that
You mean
and then I
that
was
people
immediately
have too many kids and... Sorry, I have to mute you for a second because there's an echo. Yeah, so I think what you're trying to say is that some people live beyond their means and have way too many kids, thinking that God is going to provide for the new kids, and that God says to have as many kids as possible to expand the ummah. Is that what you're saying?
no, Muhammad actually said, increase my ummah, because I want to see the largest, my ummah should be the largest on the day of judgment. So increase as much as you can. And that people take it in the wrong. I don't I don't know if he meant it exactly with him. I'm so confused. But like here people, I think, no, I don't think. I strongly believe that they put Muhammad before Allah, actually, even at so many points. So this is what he said. He said, increase my ummah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm
So
familiar with seeing that scene where people have more kids, thinking that God's going to provide, and it's sunnah to do so because Muhammad said to do so, and they can't handle it. And the unfortunate reality is some of those kids suffer.
it was so sad. And every time when I come back home, I'm just like, oh my god, I cannot do anything. I was scared at that area, and those little girls, I don't even gonna, I mean, they were children. And those, construction worker, I mean, I don't want to judge anyone's profession or anything, but people here are not very, just not very nice, to say the least. But it's just a very dangerous situation. It's increasing a lot day by day when I start to come home. So got to
Is
get
there
darker.
anything that we can, if you could think of a solution for that problem or something to help those
I
girls?
always try to, like,
I mean, aside from
there's
talking to the
there
parents, what do you think other people can do to help them?
actually, the saddest part is the parents actually send those girls because they know that they're going to end up bringing the money. When I see they have sons as well, And I'm talking about this very, very poor people
I'm trying to think of not
that
only what we can do to help, but how,
so
because I want to
yeah
keep it on topic as
that's
well, right? Because I know that this is horrible, but I don't want to feel like I'm just talking about problems that I can't either suggest a solution for or link to a certain phenomenon. So if you can think, what is there that can be done to help those girls?
unfortunately there there isn't much that can be done, and which haunts me because I'm not able to do anything. There are no social security services, and there are homeless shelter, but those homeless shelter have a very sleazy backgrounds, um, related to ST, if you understand what I mean, especially with young girls. So it's not, safe to send them there. Even though you want to, you cannot trust these people. They're legitimate news that comes out. Either these girls end up even in the
Well,
more worse conditions.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
think of, because I don't want to make this stream just about advertising all the problems that we see. I will try to think of ways that we can help, and if you can think of any, please do let me know. In the meantime,
Yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, me and my friend, we have tried to start this awareness campaign for now, just a very small awareness campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and this is somewhere we are starting. We always had a plan, but uh, like both of us have jobs, and both of us have very tough jobs actually, and so but we both see the problem, and the least we see the point is to actually spread the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
There's a concept of child labor here. Hey, it's better than going on the streets and begging and everything. You can
Syd,
just
I gotta be
keep the
honest with you.
child.
It's hard to just keep on piling problems and without really talking about how we can solve them. I don't think I'm qualified to say anything about it. I don't think a lot of the viewers are either. So the first step is bringing awareness to it. But I just want to make sure that I'm not simply using this platform to highlight everything that's wrong in that society, and whether or not it has to do with the topic at hand. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing it to our awareness, and I will see if there's anything I myself can do to do anything about it. In the meantime, I applaud you for trying to do the right thing when you do see an instance of something wrong happening. I applaud you for standing up for that woman, and I empathize with you for not only going through it yourself, but seeing people go through it and seeing everyone oppose you and supporting them. It's not easy, and I commend you for doing it.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I just hope I do make a small change. There are certain things actually going on with my health. I will know. I have already taken 5 minutes extra, so I will not delve into it. But while I have time here, I want to make a difference. I want to
Yeah.
be actually remembered to make a smallest difference. Just the smallest difference.
I'm sure you are
yeah.
making more of a difference than
Thank
you
you so
realize.
much.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Thank you
again
so
for calling,
much
and
for giving me your time,
of
and
course,
good luck. And I hope I will be able to participate
I hope so as well.
if I get a chance.
Take care, and talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to Syd for joining the live stream. For those who are waiting, so we've got more callers in queue. Thanks everyone for joining the queue. I am struggling a little bit with the new platform that I'm using to live stream, so please do keep that in mind. If you notice any issues, like if you notice the volume is not correct on my side or the callers, feel free to point that out in the live chat so I can fix it. And I want to thank Homo Sapien for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. They said, I've never sent a super chat, so why not let the first one be my favorite apostate? That's very sweet of you. I appreciate it. So we've got a few more callers to join. Dorkseid, you're going to be the next caller, so I hope you're ready because I'm adding you in a few seconds. In the meantime, if you would like to join, I may or may not have time to take your call today, but the link is pinned to the live chat, so give it a try. Maybe you'll get in. Okay, Dorkseid, I hope you're ready because I am adding you right now. Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me? You're muted, by the way, Dorkseid. Please do turn it on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Just wanted to say hi.
Hi, good to meet you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you here, and what would you like to talk about today?
Well, it's like I'm an ex-Muslim, but it's like I don't hear a lot of people with like. I'm sure there are people out there, but I mean, I'm not. I don't see a lot of it, but it's like, you have the people who are like from a Muslim background that like that's where their family is from. You have the people that were like converts to Islam. And like I feel like I'm somewhere in between because my mother was a convert to Islam, or my mother is a convert to Islam. She still is a Muslima. But was like, so I was like a really little kid when my mother got divorced, and then she converted to Islam and married a man from a Muslim country, and we moved over there. And like the rest of my family, my mother, all my brothers and sisters, they're still Muslims. So it's kind of like sometimes I'm just not sure where I fit in the whole ex-Muslim scheme of things. That makes sense.
Well, I think sometimes we focus too much on classification. Does it?
Probably not, but it's just things like I mean, I'm a white guy, so it's like, light skin, blue eyes. It's like I'm not the kind of person people would look at and think of as being a Muslim or having any connection to Muslims or anything. And also there's sometimes, I mean, you know how it goes sometimes when it's like, if you speak as an ex-Muslim about Islam, you're accused of Islamophobia and stuff. And then it's like, if I'm a white person speaking that way, it's like it's just kind of like
I can imagine you get more opposition than the average person who looks stereotypically Muslim, I suppose. So let me ask you this then. How has being an ex-Muslim or an ex-convert Muslim, how has it affected your life?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned, I'm not a person that looks Muslim or like has like I don't have citizenship in any Muslim country. I'm a U.S. citizen, so it's like in that sense I'm very privileged in that it's like I'm not somebody who's in a position where I'm in danger or anything. It's like it was relatively like safe for me to just like deconvert and all that. I think where my problems, where my struggles come in is with it's like my family still lives in a Muslim country, and like I don't even have any like legal status, so no citizenship, no residence, anything like that over there. So it's like I'm kind of on my own without family. It's like they haven't like shut me out or shunned me or anything, but like sometimes we don't see eye to eye, sometimes we don't agree, and like I haven't like actually seen any of my family in person in years, and it's like sometimes like my mom and some other people in my family, they're like, well, if you want to come back here, it's like we can find you a job like being an English teacher or something, and like you can come and live with us and everything. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I'd feel safe, and like if I'd feel safe doing that. I don't sure if I'd feel safe being in that part of the world, because I don't want to be too specific, but there is like some instability, political instability and stuff, you know?
Well, from the angle of you not being a believer, do you face any resistance there, or is it more like the logistical difficulties of moving to that place and the safety of it?
Well, it's more the latter.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. I mean, do you feel like you so it's certainly Islam has gotten in the mix when it comes to your relationship with your family, it sounds like, or at least them moving away because they're Muslims. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
But
And
other than that, like, how's your relationship?
yes, they do. And another thing is that like, well, sometimes it's like sometimes me and my mother don't get along, for instance, because, and some of that is due that I have some level of resentment over like choices she made for me as a child. And I'm just like, the feelings is like, I didn't I didn't make any decision or any choice or any informed decision to become a Muslim. It's just like it was decided for me that I'm a Muslim now, when I wasn't even old enough to like even begin to comprehend what that means. And with things like Hadridda and all that, it's like, I mean, it's not like leaving Christianity or some other religion. It's like, it's like Muslims are still feel pretty strongly about Hadridda and apostasy penalties and stuff. And it's like sometimes it's like, again, it's like I'm not on their radar, but it's like if I were to speak in the wrong place, or if I were to be identified, but sometimes it's like I said, I don't feel like necessarily safe going back to where my family lives, partially for reasons having to do with that and such.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. And I can sense that it, like you said, it must be very tricky not feeling like you're full-blown ex-Muslim, like, for example, like I would be, or what someone would perceive as the more typical image of an ex-Muslim. Do you feel like you're excluded? I mean, there's barely a community for ex-Muslims as it stands right now. We're trying to build one. But when you do come across ex-Muslims, if at all, do you feel like you're excluded because of your background?
No. It's more of the case of that I really don't have encounters with ex-Muslims unless it's just through online social media. So it's just like, mostly it would just be things like going on YouTube and watching your channel, or AP, or Abdullah Samir, all you guys in your channels. And it's like, it's more of like a parasocial relationship. I don't really have anybody that in person in my life that's another ex-Muslim that I can talk to.
Yeah, I hear you. It's not very easy to find, because usually ex-Muslims are usually in the closet about it for safety reasons, or just out of fear of backlash in whatever community they're in. So I can understand how it's difficult to find us that way.
Yeah, and then in a sense, it's like I mentioned, I do have the privilege that I'm not on anybody's radar. I don't look like a Muslim or anything, and it's like I don't have like a family that's like like a big Muslim family from a Muslim country or any of that type of situation, at least not in a direct way. But it's like at the same time, it's like because there's a sense of because I have that passing privilege, so to speak, it's like I'm a little hesitant sometimes to expose myself. If that makes sense. Like well, if it's like maybe not get the just not get the attention of the wrong people. So it's like, I mean, I wouldn't want to dox myself, and then I don't know if like I'll get the attention of the wrong people and such if I do that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I mean, do you mind if I shift gears a little?
Sure.
You know how you talk about what's like when people convert with converts, like especially people from Western countries and stuff, it's like they'll have to talk about that. It's like they're presented with this sanitized version of Islam with like all the nice parts, but it's like all the things that might not be as nice, like the misogyny, like that's like Islam supports slavery. It's like I mean the jizya, all that is like they don't put that up front, right? They might talk about zakah and they'll have you know all the narratives about how Islam is like all pro women's rights and all the stuff that they talk about. And I feel that like my mother fell into that trap. And then it's like here we are 30 years later and it's like she's still living that version of Islam, you know? She's still convincing herself that it's like all this other stuff. She's either like she'll either write off, well, that hadith is unreliable, or this verse is taken out of context, or when she can't do that, like with the wife beating verse or something like that, or it's like that slavery with mulki yamin and all that is all in the Quran. She'll like go into these weird rationalizations. Like she goes on this thing about slavery. Well, yes, it allows slavery because the way the culture and the economy wouldn't have allowed for just an overnight change. So it had to be gradual. So the Quran doesn't prohibit slavery, but sets it up where it encourages people to free their slaves so that, like, over time, slavery will just, like, abolish itself. It's like it's just this weird mental gymnastic, you know? And it's just like she's just kind of like not wanting to let go of like the version of Islam that was presented to her as like the convert. It's like she's just like never moved past that. She's just keeps finding ways to rationalize to herself that like that's what it is.
How do you feel about that when those conversations happen?
It's I don't know because it's one. I guess I was going through the not new atheist. New atheist means something. It's like being like a newly deconverted, and it's like newly an atheist, and it's like you know you go through that phase where it's like, oh wait, I just realized why all this is illogical. All I have to do is go explain to all my family and friends, and and it's like it's so obvious, right? And then if like of course they get defensive and like they just want to keep like they just want to keep making up mental gymnastics, or they get angry at me for like being the messenger, you know. It's like they don't want to accept what I'm saying, so they go into shoot the messenger mode where it's like they're angry at me for telling them this and all that kind of stuff, you know. And it's like I think that like at some level it's like we went into that direction, and then we've been struggling to like, and I think like to extent both of us have been struggling to get out of this where we're just sometimes still into like wanting to one up each other and or wanting to like win the argument rather than like prioritizing winning the argument over everything else, type of mentality. And sometimes it's like we go back to talking. I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk about religion, but then she'll like bring it up and won't let it go, and then she'll like say it's like, well, you need to stop talking about religion. You need to like let it go, be respectful. And I'm like, you're the one that brought it up. I wasn't talking about that until you started talking about it. But then again, I'm kind of I guess you could say I'm kind of in the, well, okay, I won't start the fight, but if you start the fight, I'm going to finish it. So it's like she gets me started, and then I won't, and then it's like we just keep going at each other.
Well, it might be worth thinking about how, trying to win is not actually going to win you anything. I'm sure you know that now, but in the heat of it, might not feel that way. But if you win the argument through whatever means of, giving them all the facts or using their own words against them and every way that actually logically should make sense, it might just, in a way, solidify their resistance against logic, because not only have they encountered a logical point and not swayed because they were too busy being on the defensive and being upset and angry, going forward when they hear it, they'll just subconsciously maybe remember, last time I was in an argument with someone about this, I left the argument still as much of a Muslim as I was before, so this argument isn't effective on me. So it might make them immune to it even, and it certainly doesn't help your relationship, and it certainly doesn't help them feel any better, and it won't help you feel any better in the long term too. But I know that I relate to what you said in the beginning. When you first discover certain things, you think, if I only break it down exactly this way to other people, they'll see it the way I see it, but that's not how it works. Sometimes it feels like some people, you can't change their mind, and it might just hurt you to keep trying, I think you're muted on Discord, by the way.
Okay, I don't know how that happened. Sorry.
No worries.
No, it's good. I lost my. She's like at times accused me of saying that people that believe in God are stupid, and I'm like, when did I say that? And it's like, okay, I get maybe where she's coming up. When I say that believing in God is irrational or illogical, that sounds like I'm saying that people who believe in God are stupid. But that's like, we know that's not what that means. But like when people get defensive, that's how they take it, And it's like, what was I going to say? And it's just like, no, it's not that, but it's like, I think that like we understand at this point that people attach their religious beliefs as well as the political beliefs and all kinds of beliefs like that to their identity. And like when it becomes their identity, that's when like they just want to defend it and won't accept any argument, won't accept that it's like it's not logical, and like just keep wanting to like hold on to it,
Well, what do you think the ideal scenario would be? I mean, forget the arguing. If you could just have a conversation with such a person, what do you hope would be the outcome of it?
That's the tricky part, because I'm not sure that like maybe that having that conversation should be my goal, or should be what I'm trying to achieve, because Well, I think what I've come to realize is like we were just talking about, people get defensive because it's their identity and they're defending their identity. And I think it's like there's a certain level that people have to be ready to accept, that they're ready to let go of that, and you can't just force people into that position with logic. Doesn't mean that they can't reach it. It doesn't mean that it's like if they're exposed to like the counter apologetics, that it's like it won't slowly sink in, but still they have to be ready. And I don't know if I'm the person that has the patience or the skill to like get someone to that point or argue someone to the being in that point, you know? So it's like, am I really accomplishing anything by just trying to like make all the arguments and like point out all the fallacies and all like and all that? And like you mentioned earlier, it can just like sometimes it might drive someone to like even further like hold on to things and make them less likely to be open to examining their own thoughts critically, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes having a personal relationship with that someone that you want to have a conversation with, or you happen to be in that conversation with, that personal relationship almost disqualifies that conversation from ever being productive, because not only would they be defending their identity, but it's more complicated than that. You know, if it's a mother with her son, it's admitting defeat in front of her son, which for some people that might be a point of pride, or facing the fact that she's made decisions for you, with you, on your behalf, based on this discussion, or, you know, the outcome of that discussion. So yeah, it just might not be you to ever have that conversation with her that would lead to a different place.
Yeah, and it's like, actually, I think you have a good point, because I think that like our relationship, there always has been an element of dysfunction to my relationship with her, even when I was young, even when I still like considered myself a Muslim, and we were abroad, and I'm like, why did you bring me here? I want to go back to America. That was always like a point of contention with us. And it's it's just like, I feel like, again, it's like maybe because of that, it's like I pushed her into that antagonistic area where it's like you said, it's like she doesn't like it, won't like not wanting to admit defeat, you know? It's like after all these arguments we have, she's going to be defensive for that purpose as well, because it's like she doesn't want to feel like I've defeated her or something, you know? I don't think, I mean, I don't think that that's probably a good way of explaining it, but like that's kind of like what I don't know. It's like I mean, I'm not a psychologist.
Neither am I, to be clear. Yeah, I'm just trying to help you think out loud about it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's another thing where it's like sometimes what she'll come at me with is, because I do struggle with like mental health issues, I do struggle with anxiety and depression a lot. And sometimes what she'll come out with me is, well, of course you're always so depressed because you believe that it's like you're just going to die and nothing's going to matter, and you know, it's like the whole atheists are nihilistic straw man type argument. And sometimes it's like the way she like comes at me with it, sometimes it's like what I feel like what she's actually telling me is that she is not ready to let go of religious belief because she's scared of her mortality. She's scared of that it's like there's no afterlife, you know? If that makes sense.
yeah. Often, when in my experience at least, when theists ask me that question, well, if not for God, or if not for religion, why are you still alive, or why don't you just, you know, die, or what's the point of all this? I feel like that's they're projecting what they would think if they had that realization right now. Or it's often they're not even hiding it. They're telling me straight up, yes, this is what I would think if I suddenly realized there is no God. So I try to approach it from a point of empathy. Like, even though some of them can ask it not in the nicest way, I think, poor you must be very scared right now at that thought.
Well, I suppose it's like, yeah, you have a good point about the empathy, and I mean, I suppose sometimes I'm a little too caught up in wanting to win the argument, then I shouldn't be. It's obviously not a productive mindset to be in any situation. But it's like, it also reminds me of something my sister said to me once, and she was saying to me, it's like, well, would you rather you just die and then you like worm food and that's it? It's like they like that phrase worm food in these discussions, like my mom and my sister for some reason. But it's like, is that what you want? You'd rather just like you die and then it's like you decompose and that's it? And I'm like, what does it have to do with what I'd rather? It's like reality isn't informed by my preferences, you know? That's like I'd rather be living in a mansion.
Congratulations, you just described heaven. But I think it's very telling when I hear that, wouldn't you rather, or how awful would it be if there was no justice in this world, or like you said, worm food. It's very, I mean, if we're talking about an argument or we're talking about a heated discussion, that would be a good opportunity to point out that they're basing their conclusions on what they feel like they would want, on their wants or needs, not on the facts or on the or on the succession of logical inferences, for example. But
so it's basically wishful thinking. It's like, it's by definition wishful thinking.
I mean, that is almost like a tenet or a core tenet of religion, hope and prayer. So
one thing it's like I don't understand about religious people, because I mean, I do not think that like a lot of religious people are empathetic people. I don't like.
I don't know if I can say it so generally though. But
okay, yeah.
I'll let you say it and then I'll give you.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of religious people lack empathy entirely, but it's also a lot of religious people. It's like I don't feel that they lack empathy, but it's like I don't understand. Well, it's hard to say I don't understand, because at some point in my life, I kind of had these thoughts too. But it's like the idea of that, it's like everybody else is going to hell, but it's like, lucky me, I'm so blessed. God loves me. I'm not going to hell. God is so great because he's going to save me. Maybe that's more of a Christian language there, but you get what I'm saying. It's like this idea of it does come across as like a lack of empathy. This idea of almost at times sometimes it comes across as taking pride in the idea of I'm so great that anybody who's different from me will be punished eternally just for being not like me.
I have to agree with you on that point, that some people seem to take pride in it. And I've heard the phrase, for example, in an Islamic context, you're lucky to be born a Muslim, and also you're proud to be born a Muslim. And the way that I thought of it when I was a Muslim is, sure, I'm lucky, but by definition, most humanity... Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. If I am one of the lucky fewer, a smaller percentage, then the bigger percentage of humanity is going to hell, or is unlucky to not have this answer that they're born with. And I agree with you that it can be seen as lack of empathy, especially when people gloat about it or they seem to bask in it. Some people don't. Some people are so terrified that it's almost like when, if there was a lifeboat and you had to save yourself and your baby or some random stranger, a lot of people would choose themselves, and that's just how self-preservation works. And some people view heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff from that angle, and they just see it as so inevitable, and they have no say in whether heaven or hell are actually fair or not. So they have to accept that they're fair and take what they get. But yeah, some people do bask in it, and those people absolutely don't have empathy in that regard. I do empathize with those who are so terrified that it mutes their empathy. But it certainly dulls empathy, whether the person is doing it out of fear or out of gloating.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that was like one thing that I had, even when I was a Muslim, I think that was one of the big conflicts I had, was that the idea, so all these other people, primarily just because, like you said, they weren't lucky, they weren't born into the right part of the world or the right family or the right culture, there's like, that somehow that like, that means it's just for them to go to hell. And like you said, you talk about being lucky and others being unlucky, but the also thing that just seems illogical to me is just how arbitrary that is. It's like none of us have control over like where we were born or like who our parents are. And it's like, congratulations, you were born into the right religion, whatever religion that is. I mean, Christians, like, they have the same problem, right? And it's just that, oh, congratulations, you were born into the right place at the right time with the right family to, like, be one of the people that God loves, and all these other people are arbitrarily damned. And it's just, I mean, even like setting aside any like empathy, looking at like from a cold logic standpoint, it's just the arbitrariness of it just seems so bizarre.
I mean, it's, if there wasn't that big contention, or that big I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but if it wasn't said so clearly in a lot of these religions that God is fair and loving and ultimately all the good things, then that wouldn't be an illogical problem. It could be that it's arbitrary and that just sucks and that's the way that God likes it. But because these religions say that God is fair and loving and just and all these things, it makes the arbitrary part of it seem illogical. But the theist answer usually is, you don't know what is fair. God knows that this is fair. You just don't know the method.
Well, I mean, whenever somebody tries to come at me with, it's like, oh, our puny, limited, mortal minds cannot comprehend the wisdom of God, and it's like, my response to that is like, well, yes, but like, isn't God trying to communicate with us? Isn't God trying to like establish some kind of relationship with us, or save us, or guide us, or whatever? It's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, where it's like God wants to like reach out to humanity and guide us, but at the same time he won't give us brains that are able to comprehend him. So everything just seems irrational and arbitrary to us because, well, we're just too puny minded to understand it. And the other thing about that is that it's like, I could make the argument that God actually, like, just make the most random arbitrary thing, that God sends people to heaven or hell based on how many pepperoni pizzas they've eaten in their lifetime. And somebody would say, it's like, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, no, it's not. You just can't comprehend God.
Well, the one pitfall of your plan here, okay, though it logically it sounds the same. The one pitfall is you need to have it codified in a text and have people chant it, and then it seems legitimate. You know what I mean?
Well, what about all the other gods that codified their religions and their texts and have people that chant that?
I think
Again,
that's that's like the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where the ones that have survived, or the ones that now seem logical to the people that follow them, seem like they were right all along, and all the other ones were just wrong or fake or whatever it may be. But yeah, from a neutral point of view, all the other ones that failed to succeed or to grow, or that we don't hear about anymore, or have been erased by other religions sometimes, they were working with the same, ground of logic. And yeah, there's just you and I can agree on that, but I'm sure a theist might have something better to say about that. Yeah. By the way, I haven't been very good at determining the length of each caller's segment so far, but I think we're getting close to the end of our segment here. So I just wanted to give you a heads up in case there's something that you wanted to mention before we end.
Okay, I was just wanting to add to my earlier thought, and that's the idea that it's if God is just so beyond what we can comprehend that it's just we can't understand it, then it's like you can't make an argument at all, because like I said, God actually decides based on how many pizzas you've eaten in your lifetime or whatever, and it's just because our puny human minds can't comprehend God's wisdom. And it's like, well, if I say that it's like, well, God actually will put all the atheists in heaven and torture all the theists, and why? Well, because we can't comprehend it. And it's like, well, you can't make an argument if your argument is that God is just beyond what we can comprehend. God's truth and God's justice and God's wisdom is true, but we can't comprehend it. Then it's like you can't make an argument because you can't comprehend the mind of God. It's just like
it's paradoxical. Either God is trying to explain something to us logically, or a theist is trying to explain something logically, or it's so beyond logic and reason that they're irrelevant. We can't have it both ways.
Yeah, exactly. So it's either way. It's like there's nothing we can do about it, because there's no way we can comprehend God's plan or God's wisdom or God's justice or whatever. So it's like we're just choosing blind no matter what we do. And it's just like,
I mean, I like to think that there's more coherence to the conclusion that I arrived at than a conclusion that involves the paradoxical position of, God makes sense, but also God is beyond making sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's...
Yeah.
I think there's also I know you said we're running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about
well, I could tell you for sure that I'd be more than happy to have you on the live stream again, and I have a feeling that you'll be calling back again.
It depends on my work schedule.
Well, we'll be doing this on Wednesdays. Time is going to vary, but usually on every Wednesday, so it's going to be around this time, maybe a few hours earlier. But I hope that, I know that by then you'll have even more thoughts about some of what we talked about. And I hope that we get to have you on the live stream again.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's
Of course.
And one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you in particular is because it's I'm an Arabic speaker, so it's I would like to get to talk with other Arabic speakers sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I am here. And at any point, if you'd like to speak in Arabic, and I would respond in English. The only thing is, I don't speak in Arabic on these live streams just to hide my identity, my ethnic background. But if you would like to practice your Arabic every now and then, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. And I'm glad you found the channel, and I hope to hear from you again.
Okay. Yes, hopefully. Same here.
All right. I'll see you around.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Thanks again to the caller. Funny, I've got a comment from Seed of Iblis says, this guy was in Islam longer than me. Yeah, so we've got all sorts of people who were in religion for varying lengths, and seems like this person was a Muslim for longer than this ex-convert, I suppose. Okay, we've got more callers that I'm getting to in the queue. Sean, I hope that you're ready because you're going to be the next caller. Let me just read a comment before we move on. Sarah says, it was so great hearing from you. I'm sure there are other ex-Muslims from convert families that feel like you. Take care with a heart. There are several, at least several, watching the live stream at the moment. So yeah, thank you again to the caller. Okay, so Sean, I hope you're ready because I'm adding you right now, if it works. It's a little finicky. What's going on? Okay, guys, give me a second. Bear with me. There we go. Hey, Sean, can you hear me? You are muted, by the way.
Can you hear me
Yes, I can hear you.
now? Well, thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm happy to have you. So you've been on the call before a few times, but for those who don't know, if you'd like to give us a short introduction and what you'd like to talk about today.
Sure. Well, I'm a person who is in a Muslim family and who was never very devout to begin with, like a lot of ex-Muslims are. And then over the years just came to become more certain about that the premise of Islam is false. It's based on false beliefs. But grew up in America and from a South Asian family, and that's basically my background. The things I wanted to talk to you about today is what my experience is. What is one of the worst things about Islam is how it treats a person who doesn't agree. I'm not going to character assassinate all Muslims and say that they have zero empathy. It's sometimes easy to do that if you feel you've been harmed. But there are very many good Muslims, and they contribute a lot to society, and so you have to acknowledge that. But in my experience, when you don't agree or you don't go along with it, the treatment is one of the worst things. And I would say my experience is you're not a second-class citizen, you're a third or fourth-class citizen in a family. And then the other thing is the cognitive dissonance, I think, that I see from Muslims, who are, once again, very good people, but they can often hold views that are very abhorrent. Just for one example, I've even seen people in my family who are very hesitant to condemn someone like Osama bin Laden or the Taliban and what they're doing in Afghanistan. And so the cognitive dissonance is another thing that I've found is very disturbing. Do you have anything you want to say?
Well, trying to think, can you give us an example of something that you've had to deal with recently in terms of cognitive?
Well, recently you had done something, I believe, about the Prophet Muhammad cheating, being caught cheating. And so looking into that, and I get a lot of my information from you, and so looking into that episode, he was caught sleeping with a slave and also committing adultery. And then I came to the realization that, well, not only was he...
I got to interject for a second. It doesn't count as adultery because it's his slave, but...
Okay. Right. Okay, so, yeah, right. Thank you for correcting me. Okay, so there was the realization that he was having sex with a slave. and then at the same time, Aisha was one of his wives, and she was a young child. So he was having, at the same time he was having sex with a slave, he was having sex with a child. So and then at the same time, I'm sure he's doing it. But just to focus in on those two things. Um, so I came to realize through people like yourself, and then studying that and correct me if I'm wrong, but what we know about Muhammad, the biography of him, is strictly based on the Hadith. Is that is that how Muslims and Islam get the biography?
No, there's some works of scholars compiled in the Prophet's seerah, his stories about the prophets, basically a biography about the Prophet. So, and a lot of it is also, citing the hadith. So it's all kind of interconnected there. But it's these secondary sources inform most of what we know about Muhammad, the man.
Okay. My understanding was the seerah was based a lot on the hadith. So just focusing on those two things, I think it's stated very clearly in there that he was having sex with a slave, and then also he was in a relationship with a child. So if you bring that to my mother or to my sister or to any other Muslim woman in my family, they have no issue with it. And so that's what I mean by the cognitive dissonance, is under normal circumstances, most people would be shocked, and I think that would be the normal circumstance. So Islam, I guess, ends up pushing people into cognitive dissonance in situations like that, and then many other situations. Another situation that comes to mind is one time I played it's not good to discuss religion with a devoutly religious family because it just leads to conflict. But in the past, I played a game where I said, hey, who's going to hell and who's going to heaven? So I rattled off a bunch of names, and I rattled off like George W. Bush, and he had done the Iraq War, and they had no problem with people like that saying, oh yeah, they're going to be punished. But then when I got to bin Laden, they said, well, we don't know what he's done. Or they said something like, well, that's for Allah to judge. So right away, their first impulse was to cast doubt upon him, or almost protect him. And so that's another example, I guess, of cognitive dissonance that I've seen. That, once again, I'm trying to say that Muslims can be the greatest people, but these types of things is very shocking to me, and this can lead to even further. Once you have cognitive dissonance, it can go further and further until it gets really bad. Another example that comes to my mind is when I was traveling overseas. I was in a family member's house, and a female cousin, she was actually my niece, who's devoutly religious, was discussing at a family dinner how non-believers were going to be thrown off of a bridge in the hell. And I'm not sure exactly which verse or hadith she was referring to, but she just said it so casually. And I felt very embarrassed because I wanted to speak up and say that, first of all, it's a very nasty thing to say, but just to point out that how many friends I have and good people I know who by her insinuation are going to be thrown off that bridge. But I was kind of, obviously pressured into keeping silent. So that's another thing I think that is tough about Islam and being a non-believer, is that you have to keep silent in moments like that.
I mean, what an odd conversation to have when you're hanging out with family. I mean, even if you weren't on the opposing side of things, if you were just in support of what she's saying, imagine hanging out with your family. Like, for those who are watching who can't relate, just imagine this. You're hanging out with your family and they're talking about who deserves to be tortured. That's really messed up. And that's just a regular, it's not that out of the ordinary to hear that in that kind of family.
And this is a girl who otherwise is, I'll say she has character and so forth. And I got the idea that she was only saying it to almost please her family. It was at a family dinner, and she's younger. She was 17, 18. She has a lot of older family members, and they're very devout. So I think it's that situation where she gets a lot of, to be honest, she gets a lot of benefit within her family, and people like myself would get a lot of punishment. So that's another thing I found is the thing I disliked the most about the situation that I'm in, or you're in, or others are in, being a non-believing Muslim, is you find yourself in those situations. And another thing I wanted to say, I know you have some other callers, so is that sometimes I think coming out to your family isn't the best strategy. Like if you're thinking about self-preservation in your future, you really have to have a strategy. Like, and I don't know how you feel about that. Like, nobody wants to give advice to others, but if you're in a very devout family, coming out is almost like committing suicide. Like, because once again, Islam, they're just not going to react. And the further and further you go with it, like maybe if you're just missing prayers and keeping quiet, they won't harass you so much. But God forbid you were to come into a forum like this and speak your mind, or even live more freely, dress more freely, have your own relationships, on and on and on. Then the harmful attitudes just increase. And so that's what I've found is another harmful thing about being a Muslim.
I mean, I'm with you there. Not everyone should come out to their family, or at least not at the moment that you decide to do it, or that the idea comes to you. It depends on the person, and for some people, it might be worth it to wait a little bit till they're more independent or in a better position to do such a thing. It's dangerous how, but understandable how a lot of people, once they have a certain realization, or once they finally feel like they've gotten the clarity or courage or whatever it is that their situation calls for, that they now need to act on it, that they need to change their life, that they need to gain their freedom or speak their truth. And the reality of it is, it depends on the person. Some people, it might just be a cause of, regular arguments in the household, which that also means different things for different people. For some people that means danger. For some people it just means inconvenience. So number one is look out for yourself and try to do what's best for you. Not just, lay down and take it and just don't say anything ever, but try to be strategic about who you tell what, and look out for yourself first and foremost.
Yeah, like there's been some talk about how do you find a community when you are an ex-Muslim, and that is a very, very tough question. I'm not sure there is any one answer, because let's say you're in a situation where you have a lot of friends who are still Muslims. They may frequent the mosque or whatever. You met them through the mosque, and they're good people, and so it doesn't make any sense to throw those friendships away. I don't think it really does. It's kind of self-sabotaging yourself, and then it's not necessarily true that just because you hang out with ex-Muslims that you'll find that you enjoy their company. You know what I'm trying to say by that? But for me, because I felt my mental health was suffering a little bit in a situation in which people were having such cognitive dissonance, and I had such few allies in the family. That's one thing if you can find some people who are allies of yours, but I didn't have many. So eventually I had to go through a long process, which led to depression as a result of the dynamics of the family. And what got me out of my depression, if I could just share that, was ironically, it was two things, I think, but one was dog sitting. My father had passed away, and then I had gotten divorced, and then on top of that, already I had my family dynamics in that situation I had no support, and so I was very depressed for a year, and I chose to do dog sitting because dogs are very loyal animals, and I had never really owned one before or anything like that, but they are, as I said, very loyal and very loving. And it was through dog sitting, and in particular I met one gentleman who traveled quite frequently, and almost every weekend he needed me to watch his dog, and I developed kind of a kinship with this dog. And it got me out of bed in the morning, instead of oversleeping, and it got me more active, going on walks, etc., etc. And so eventually this was a very positive force in my life. But when I shared this with my mother, she was disgusted, and she asked me to stop doing this right away. And I'm sure that was based upon her belief that dogs are very impure animals. So it didn't really matter in that situation that I was sharing with my mother that, hey, this is how I recovered from depression and feeling so much better. She found it to be disgusting. So that's another thing I think that Islam can do to somebody without realizing it, or Muslims can do. They can kind of traumatize you. If you find a way of recovering outside of, let's say, Islam, like, because they would want you to double down on your faith or something like that. But if you find something, and God forbid it contradicts with Islam, like dog sitting, but eventually through that, I started to have conversations with people, go out and try and meet people, and then I met my wife, and she has a Muslim background, but she's very open-minded, and so I didn't have to find necessarily an ex-Muslim, or I was able to find a person who understands, and she's open-minded. So I hope I influence her when I talk to her about topics. But she became my community, and then more recently we had a baby, and so that became my community. And as I said, the dog sitting, and so whatever a person finds as their community, then I do encourage that, because if you're feeling any mental health effects, I guess that would be the reason I'm calling is, if people out there who are listening do feel that there's depression, there's thoughts of harming yourself or anything like that, harming others, you need to act upon it and understand what are the forces causing it and get to the root causes of it and take the necessary steps. I'm not saying sever ties, of course, as I said, but just coming to understanding that there are things like that, like dog sitting or exercise or being out in nature or whatever. And one of the last things I want to say to you is that let's just say that people do get. I'm not here to cast doubt on a Muslim who says, "When I pray, I find peace," etc. But to me, like, you could find that same peace from just doing breathing exercises. You could sit in a room and close your eyes and control your breathing and have the exact same physiological effects as prayer, but without all the harmful side effects of Islamic salat. So once again, like, hey, you stop praying and you find yourself anxious. Well, breathing exercises, I think, is one of the best ways to actually calm yourself down and bring yourself some mental clarity and some mental peace. I wanted to share that also.
Sometimes people don't realize that it's one aspect of prayer that grounds people is just the recurring nature of it. Sometimes it's the almost mindless nature of it for some people that makes it grounding. The fact that you know all the steps by heart, the fact that some people actually use it as meditation time, and some people, like myself, I used to struggle with clearing my thoughts, and I would feel bad that I'm thinking about anything that isn't about prayer, but some people don't have that kind of guilt. So there's a lot of different ways that prayer can help you that might seem like it's because specifically it's that prayer to that God, but it's actually just the habit of it, or factors that have nothing to do with a God beaming good vibes into your head or your heart. So for people who are worried about losing that, if they lose religion, you can recreate the steps even with different words, or find something similar to it that makes you feel the same way. It's very, very doable.
There's a river, just to share quickly, there's a river in India, it's called the Ganges River, and it's very holy to Hindus, but it's also very polluted. They've done tests on it, it's extremely toxic. People like use the bathroom in there, and they wash their clothes and etc. But there is a ritual in which the Hindus go and they wash themselves in the Ganges, which is, like I said, it's more polluted than toilet water. But afterwards, and they drink some of it, afterwards they all report that they feel more spiritually at peace. And so who am I to doubt them? And I'm not here to mock them or anything like that, but once again, it just goes to show that you can report finding peace from many, many different ways, and dog sitting and breathing exercises was one of the things, and of course, like getting married. And so I just wanted to share that. And then before I just jump off, I just wanted to say that, like, hey, good luck with your live streams. It's really crazy that people have tried to stop the good work you're doing. And I just wanted to ask you: have you ever like Apu is in your live streams often, but I noticed that Iago isn't. And have you ever just considered that Iago is the culprit because he's jealous of Apu's screen time?
Well, thank you. That's a theory I hadn't considered, but it might be a bad theory because I don't see either of them right now. So it could be any one of them. Could just be,
Okay.
in the peripheral vision, it's an orange cat. They might be switching places. They might be colluding on this, but yeah. It's been great now, and we have a new live streaming setup that we've been using right now, and thankfully it's been intuitive enough that we've had a lot of callers today, including yourself. So yeah, I appreciate your encouragement, and we're back no matter what cat tries to stop me. Which one of them?
It's great to hear you, and I'll jump off so I can allow other people time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And I'll talk to you another time. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, Shaun. We've still got a few more callers. Thanks, Shaun, for sharing your ways of coping with it and ways of finding community. And everyone has, I believe, joined me. And I didn't say it on the stream, but congratulations on the baby. We're all very happy for you. All right. I said this before and I'll say it again. I do not want this turning into a cult. All right. This is not going to be one of those situations where I'm the guy on top and you're praying to me or something. We're not doing that here. I just ask for your support. That's all I ask for. Okay. Well, I've got Fresh Wizard is next. I hope you're ready because I'm going to be adding you in a few seconds. In the meantime, where is my cat? That is suspicious. Okay, Fresh Wizard. Which channel are you in? Yeah, I hope you're ready because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, can you hear me? You are muted, by the way.
Hi there.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi. Sorry, I've got you. I was listening on YouTube. I was listening to the last guy,
No
and
worries.
turned off the stream. Yeah. Hi. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. Thanks. What about yourself?
Yeah, pretty okay. A little busy, a little tired, but yeah, not too bad. We just set this timer, and I know you have like a limited time to let everyone through. So, yeah, I'm a little nervous. This is the first time I've streamed on YouTube, so
Oh, well, there's
forgive me.
no need to be, but I understand why you would be. Well, would you like
Yeah.
me to, I'll ask you first, for example, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about yourself and what motivated you to call in today, what you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, so okay, so I was speaking to one of your moderators and I was explaining that I'm not an ex-Muslim. I guess an ex-Christian. I still identify as Christian, but I'm more sort of like a spiritualist in a sense. I grew up when I was younger. I grew up in a Muslim environment. I lived in a area where there were a lot of Muslims, so I've always sort of been around the culture. My childminder was Muslim. I grew up with her, around in the kitchen taking care of the kids, and the father sort of like disappearing and coming in to like pray 5 times a day and stuff. So I'm very familiar with the kind of culture. And later on in life, the interest was always there. As a Christian, I was always like, who was right, and I also had this kind of sentiment that we should all pray for each other, just to cover our bases. Um, and yeah, you know, growing up, I started to like gain more interest in it. I came across I was interested in Jordan Peterson. I actually followed him. I quite liked him, and I noticed that he had a interview with he was getting quite popular in the Muslim communities, and he had an interview with Muhammad Hijab. Funnily enough, and I that's kind of how I sort of it's kind of sparked my interest in Islam because growing up, outside of like the view that I had as a child, there was so many like conflicting things. 9/11 happened, and there was like the Taliban, and all of a sudden there was like this kind of good and bad. There was drama sort of happening in the UK, and and at the same time, I knew a lot of Muslim people, and they were wonderful to me. I've never had a bad encounter, or for the most part. Anyway, I started getting interested. I listened to Muhammad Hijab, and I started looking at the street, what they call it, speakers corner stuff, and uh, I gotta say, I wasn't entirely fond of his rhetoric. So much so that I was like, there has to be people who have left the religion who are just as vocal as this guy. Because a lot of the times when I heard him speak, I had kind of like a what the hell kind of reaction, like whoa. Um, and so I tried to go on the other side. I was like, the problem is Islam. The first person that popped up was Apostle Prophet. And I looked at some of the videos, and I was very impressed with who I found, like the friendly ex-Muslim, Harry Sultan, and yourself, because in this day and age, when people come out as ex-Muslim or leave a religion, I feel like it shouldn't be this impressive, like kind of ballsy, brave thing. It should be kind of like a sort of a matter of life, mundane, right? Yet I can't help but be impressed at like particularly Apostle Prophet, that just like the fucking balls of being as outspoken as he is. I respect that. Respect that kind of goal. Because I've seen and I've heard growing up people, just getting bodied for less, right? Um, and then I kind of grew tired of the whole, because I don't like I don't want to like just trash Islam. I'm not into that. Although, like I said, when people do it, I can't help but tip my hat, because the fucking balls. Excuse me, I didn't know if you swear, yeah. But I came across your videos, and I'm really into the uh I'm really into the level of conversation that you have. I like that you sort of take a different route where you're able to explore different feelings, different sentiments, and have these conversations outside of the kind of like Islam is bad sort of thing. Um, because it gives me a lot more perspective of people who are inside of the religion and outside of the religion, and have come from the religion or have gone to the religion, and yeah, and it's that has interested me, immensely. And despite what happened to you in like the last stream, that was very frustrating because I was looking forward to that stream. Um, I really do. I'm kind of watching out and looking to see where this goes, because as it stands in like the climate of the Muslim community, um, it I think there'll be a lot that comes from it, in terms of like perspective, because there's so many like conflicting things with like the Western community and Islam. I think conversations like these and outlets like these that you have it might not seem like much now, but I think it will be a big deal. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you sharing with us how you arrived here and your thoughts about all of that. And I find it a little bit ironic that you arrived here by watching Jordan Peterson and Muhammad Hijab, and that Muhammad Hijab led you here basically. And I'm grateful for that irony. I love that. And I appreciate everything else that you had said as well. And I'm wondering, do you think, sorry, remind me again, do you have religious beliefs or beliefs about God? And do you think that you might be exposed to things that would make you think about them differently by watching my content?
So to answer the question immediately, no. I grew up in a very strict sort of Christian household, and my kind of development outside of Christianity is, I think, the most natural sense in that I mean I was a devout Christian. I mean when I was a kid, like God was like my imaginary friend, right? Like everyone has like her imaginary friend. Mine was God. Like I wanted to be like Jesus. I still do. And I uh yeah, but growing up and listening to, going to school and learning history, it just seemed very clear to me that, okay, Occam's razor, the Bible is likely the reflection and indication of kind of man's desire to rule over man with an ideology that works, and such texts are, they reflect whatever we desire, sort of paradise and peace, and also dominion, right? So it just seemed very natural to me, but I'm kind of in more of the Jordan Peterson school of thought, and I thought this way before I listened to Jordan Peterson, but he kind of affirmed it in that, like, religious texts and mythos are kind of like they reflect the collective psyche of humanity, and yeah, this is kind of where I'm at in terms of spirituality. I do believe that there may be a divine creator. I think that we as people have anthropomorphized it, but yeah, I still have habits like I pray and I meditate, but I doubt that there's any kind of religious doctrine that could sway me in a sense. It would have to be very effective.
Well, I wonder if there is a divine creator. What do you think? I mean, if we can even ascribe thoughts to it, but what do you think it thinks about this whole people projecting their own emotions and ideas about God onto religion?
Oh wow. Huh. I'd I'd imagine it would. Well, I would imagine it would be. It would think the same thing that it thinks about, like all the other things that are a result of the human psyche, right? Like, why we love, or the irrationality of, romantic love, or you know why we hurt people even when we don't intend to, that kind of thing. I imagine it would be the same. uh I would imagine whatever divine entity exists would have the same disposition. It would probably be very natural, and it would probably. But yeah, I don't know that I could come up with an answer, because I think that's a little deep. That's not something I could answer sort of honestly in a
That's
short
okay.
while.
I'm
Mhm.
just curious about your thoughts on it. I mean, if someone asked me that question, I'd probably take 10 minutes to think about it and then come up with some non-answer.
Yeah,
But I like yours that being might also be trying to project its own way of thinking onto us and figure out why is it not fitting. We're
mm,
assuming that being is not then all knowing and all powerful in the same way that we think about many of the current gods. But it would be even funnier if that being is trying to figure us out, like I'm trying to figure out my pets. Why are they acting like
yeah,
this? What do you want? Do
yeah,
you want more food? Like, what's wrong?
yeah.
Yeah, it's amusing that way.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I do have a couple questions. Just like
Hmm.
before. I don't want it to get too long before, because I have like a list of notes, and I was really interested in what you might have thought about it. Um, so there are. Okay, so there are a couple ones where regarding kind of the state of Islam in kind of the modern world, right? I just took a look at the Pew Research, and uh, including the other religions, it's growing at like it's sort of the fastest growing religion, and I've seen like the sort of counter arguments as to why that may be. I've heard of the birth rates and stuff like that. Although it seems to have contradicted another another piece of information I came across where in Iran, uh, apparently due to the kind of hijab protests, there have been like 50,000 out of 75,000 mosques that have closed down due to inactivity. I don't know if you knew about this, and what do you think that what do you think that would be an indicator of, like, if if you did know about that?
I mean, I didn't know specifically about those numbers, but I've met Persians in person, and I was surprised to realize that most of them are very not religious, and some of them have not been religious for over one generation. So it's not just that, the person that I meet that is my age is not Muslim anymore. Sometimes it's even their parents, and I think it's very interesting how when religion is forced on people, they don't want to do it. But when I feel like if this might be a little bit off topic, but if Iranians had felt that someone is trying to force them out of religion, or their religion is under attack, or their identity is under attack, or like in the US there's this war on Christmas idea, the more that people feel like people don't want us to do this and it's our right to do it, the more that they double down on it. But it's the opposite in Iran. The more that they're forced to do it, the less that they want to do it. And I think we're seeing the effects of that. But that doesn't mean that if we just let people who want to force religion on others, do their thing, then eventually no one's going to be religious. Of course, it doesn't always work that way. But I think that's partly it. And I think that's partly why some people like this idea that their religion is under attack, because it gives them something to believe in, and it gives them more
Something
reason
to
to stick together. Yeah, exactly. Cohesion, basically. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's because that kind of segues into like the other thing I wanted to ask in terms of like, because every time I've gone online, I believe, and even in like very low energy, very low intensity conversations like the one, we're having now, or the one in certain like debates, I've always noticed that more so than any other representative of a religion, the kind of energy, or like you could like kind of see the blood pressure kind of go up in the sort of like apologists for Islam. There always seems to be that ego, even in low intensity debates, that overwhelms their kind of their discussion, their way of thinking in a discussion, right? And I've always wondered what that is. And do you think there's like, you mentioned how people kind of feel personally attacked when they feel like their religion is being attacked. Do you believe that there might be sort of a golden bridge, in a sense, to a way that people can kind of, they can accept a challenge to their belief without feeling personally attacked? Like a good example would be like Stephen Colbert, who was a devout Christian, was able to have a conversation with, I can't remember who it was, but he was able to have a conversation with someone, and completely accept that, within his reasoning, his perspective, he could be wrong, but he even though he is wrong, he would prefer to live this way. Where I've never seen that sentiment. I've never seen that attitude from a person defending it's Islam in its entirety. There always seems to be a kind of a vitriol behind like soft words. There seems to be like a kind of intent to defend and attack.
Well,
Yeah.
I can lend you some theories as to why, or hypotheses as to why that's the case. One of them being that this is a new territory for a lot of Muslims. So if your whole life you grew up, and the generations before you grew up saying Islam is great, even non-Muslims sometimes concede that Islam is great, as the stories go, by believers among themselves. And there's all these legends and some of them actual religious stories about the Prophet in his days, some of them about some scientist or some Christian who joined Islam because he was stumped by how amazing the arguments are. this rhetoric has like taken hold in the Islamic world for several generations at the very least. I can't speak for, 2 generations ago, but I know that at least in my parents' time and in my time growing up in the Middle East, there was not a hint of opposition to all of these ideas. And now it's a new age of interconnectivity, and it feels to them like a new targeted attack that did not exist before. That's one side of it. From their perspective, this is new, and this is coordinated, and this is intentional, and this is personal, when in reality, from a Christian's point of view, for example, this has been going on in many countries for a long time, that Christianity has been subjected to debates, to sometimes even outright mockery, sometimes satire by Christians themselves. Sometimes, like, Christians can make more jokes about Christianity and still be a Christian. But in Islam, it's very, the line for blasphemy is very it's a much lower bar for blasphemy. So that's one side of it, is that it's a new territory and it feels like a targeted attack, and there's a lot of narrative, of us versus them, and so it seems like evidence of a targeted attack, the fact that it's spiked up now since the internet, or more like evidence that confirms the narrative that has always been there, that the non-believers are jealous of you, or they oppose you, and all that. So that's just one side of it. And another side is, because of this lack of critical opposition or even resistance within Muslim groups themselves, you don't have a refinement of speakers. So if someone were to come out and argue for Islam or preach for Islam, it's almost like training an AI. You're not training it for the case where there is someone who comes up with an argument against you. You're just training it for fictional cases about silly arguments and straw man arguments, and sometimes just no arguments. It's just straight up preaching on and on. So by the time that they've made a name for themselves, or a following, or some kind of reputation as a good speaker, and then they face someone who's giving them any, ounce of opposition, you haven't filtered through all of the good Muslim speakers to figure out, and by good I mean like talented or capable in a discussion. You haven't filtered through those to figure out who's actually good at what they're saying and who's just getting a lot of yes men because that's what their society is. So that's why you get a lot of people who have made it to having a big following, and then they participate in a conversation, and then the anger and frustration shows up immediately because they're not competent at handling that. They've never heard no before in that way. So that's my take on that. It's not that I think inherently being a believer of Islam makes you worse at arguing. I think that it's just because of the circumstances that led up to where we are today. You're seeing a lot of unrefined discussions.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, man. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that. Well, my timer just went out, so I don't want to take up too much time. I hope that I was able to sort of coherently get all of my thoughts and questions out. I don't know if I could get away with like one last question, if that's okay, or I'm happy to bounce and let someone come through.
I want to say yes, but I don't trust myself to not talk for too long. So how about this? If you're able to join next week or the week after, I'll be doing these on Wednesdays, so hopefully you can join again.
Yeah. All right. That sounds good to me. Yeah. Well,
so
thank you for your time.
Look forward to hearing from you again. Yeah. Thank you for coming here. And
Likewise.
Take care.
All right, man.
See you around. Bye-bye. Thanks again to the caller. And it seems like we've got 2 more callers left. Suzy is next. So, heads up, I'm going to add you in a few seconds. And it seems like there's a heated discussion going on in the live chat. I haven't been paying attention to it, but it seems to be all above board, so carry on, guys. Have fun. Okay. Suzy, I hope you are ready, because I am adding you now. Hey, Suzy, can you hear me? Are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Hello, Aladdin. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. How's your day going?
Very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been good. A bit late now, but yeah. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and tell you a bit about myself. So, I'm from the Middle East. My husband is partially from the Middle East as well. And about 5 years ago, we left Islam. And it's been a tough journey. It wasn't easy at all. It was really tough. But we're very happy with our decision. And we count our blessings every day. Waking up in the morning, knowing that we don't have to wake up for Sabah to pray or making wudu in the middle of the night in winter or even in summer. Yeah. So it's been good, but it's been very tough as well.
Well, I'm
When
happy to hear
when I
that you
left,
had an ally with you, that you left Islam together.
yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I left Islam a month before him. It was a very tough month because we were arguing every single day,
Mhm.
and then he followed. Yeah, but
Well,
yeah, yeah, yeah. When I first when it clicked in my head that it cannot be true for so many reasons. Most of it is just human rights in general and women's rights in general. When I just thought about it critically, I felt so angry. I felt betrayed by my parents. I felt both of them passed away now, but I felt that they had duty of care, they had duty to protect me, and yet they did send me to those lessons to learn about Islam and memorize all that Quran and the Hadith and the stories and reinforce those misogynistic views in me. And at one point, I was defending Islam, but when I left I felt so angry, and I felt that I didn't have any right to express myself or to tell the world that I left Islam, or to write on Facebook like they do. I'm Muslim. I'm proud. I'm an ex-Muslim. I'm proud, or I'm an atheist. I'm proud, or yeah. It felt really bad at the time. Now I do understand that my parents haven't done anything wrong. I was about to do the same to my children. Thank goodness they've been saved in a way. They don't have to be subjected to the same things I was subjected to. Out of love, of course. My parents loved me, and their way of showing love is that they wanted me to be saved in a way. And the way to be saved is to be a good Muslim and to wear the hijab and to gaslight yourself every single day about Islam and about your place as a woman in Islam. So yeah, it's been tough, but sometimes I forget about it. Sometimes it's always in my mind. I like the days where I live my days without thinking about religion, not Islam only, about any ideology, about yeah. But it's the problem is that when you communicate with Muslims, it's really a big part of their language and speech and communication is the mentioning of God, the mentioning of God's help, God's protection, God's like Alhamdulillah, Allah yahmikum, all these terminology. You can't escape it. You can't just say yeah, whatever. You have to pretend that yes, inshallah, God willing. It's really sad because they have the right to enforce it on me, but I cannot be myself in front of them. See what I mean?
yeah, and sometimes I discount or forget just how big of a role it plays in a person's affirmation of their belief. Like when someone says, may God protect you, or God willing, so and so, and you respond, God willing, like say you're a believer, or, I hope so too, I hope God does so and so. You're almost like reassuring yourself and each other, God is real, right? Like this is all good.
Yes.
Like, but we don't realize it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. So
and
I can
like you said, you can't participate. Like you're forced to participate in that, because if you say an answer that doesn't sound like it's agreeing with them, it just doesn't flow right, or they might notice that something's odd with this conversation. It's bizarre.
It's the language has been hijacked by Islam in a way. I can carry a conversation with a Muslim in English without mentioning the word God, and that would be acceptable. But if we were to switch to Arabic, you can't do it without saying Alhamdulillah, mashallah, inshallah, all that Allah talk in a way. It's really tough. And that happens even with Christians. It's not as much, but yes. And it just feels unfair, basically. And of course, socially, I feel distant from the Muslim community because even when I joined them, I don't feel pleasure anymore. Listening to someone saying, for example, God honored the woman by naming a surah in the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of women, and me saying, but he named a chapter after a cow as well, and non-believers, the kafirun, and they wouldn't like it, even though it's true, and even though I'm mentioning that as a fact, not as mocking their opinion, but they wouldn't like it. So I stopped finding any pleasure with the company of my community, unfortunately. But I'm not regretting that as such. It's just I'd rather be alone than being forced to a conversation where it's not fair, where my opinion is not being allowed to be expressed, let alone being listened to or convinced or given a chance to be judged, whether to be convinced or rejected in a way. So yeah, it's not easy, but I feel lucky that I'm not in the Middle East, because if I was, probably I would never consider leaving Islam. That's another thing. Is the constant supply of indoctrination. It's non-stop in the public transport, in the mosque, in the house, and on the telly. So at least I had a chance to think for myself here. And I really hope that people in the Middle East, with all that communication and YouTube and social media, will find it easier to think for themselves. And probably it is happening, but it's much tougher to be a non-Muslim amongst a Muslim family. That's the thing.
It is. I know it's happening, and I wish I could, like, this is one point of comparison. Maybe you can help me out if you can remember. I used to take some airlines in when I lived in Saudi Arabia, and in the announcements that they would give, like safety announcements and all that kind of stuff, sometimes they have an automated announcement for Dua Rukub, like the prayer for, like the prayer for getting on a plane or on a vehicle. Or it's, what's funny is the prayer is for getting on a naqa, on a camel. You know, it's for travel. It's not really meant for automated things, but sure, like Muslims use that prayer for safety when riding a plane. And it's funny because
I once
go ahead.
In an Omani airline, it's the same, and they say it's for blessing, for barakah, basically. But it's ridiculous, because they don't take in consideration the non-Muslims who are riding, like who are boarding the airplane with them. So it's just, there's a general lack of respect and entitlement when it comes to, we're free to practice whatever we want. We're free to do it the way we want, regardless of what the other believe. And in the UK, for example, Muslims have a lot of rights, but at the same time, amongst themselves, they play the victim card, and even in public, they still play the victim card, and they still feel that they're not actually given their rights, in spite of all the freedom they have to practice. Actually, in my opinion, it's too much of a freedom. It's a harmful freedom. It's not healthy amount of freedom they have. I don't know if you agree with me.
I disagree a little bit. I think it's not the freedom to do things that bothers me. It's the wide berth, the people's reluctance to intervene when the freedom is freedom to harm oneself or somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
I agree.
it's
Yeah.
not that I don't think, for example, people shouldn't be allowed to have a mosque or to go to pray at the mosque. That's not the issue. The issue is when people don't want to touch a domestic, disturbance, because that's just, how Muslims deal with things, or that's just how this family deals with things. That is not
Yeah.
freedom. That is a different degree of personal freedom. That's freedom to harm other
Yeah.
people because it's religiously allowed. Or like people, I've already spoken about this. The Canadian police didn't want to intervene and even ask questions about someone who is doing exorcisms, Islamic exorcisms, on live streams on kids sometimes, because they think, well, there's no evidence that anyone here is a minor, so we're just not going to interfere. I don't think that's too much freedom. I think that's almost criminally being complacent about people harming each other and themselves. So I don't agree exactly that they have too much freedom. That this is where I disagree.
I totally agree with you. What I meant with too much freedom is like, for example, participating in front of, demonstrating in front of schools against gay rights in a way, or teaching children about gay rights, or
I think,
or
like,
for example,
in an example like that, people should be allowed to demonstrate in front of a school if they want to. But on the other hand, people should be allowed to demonstrate in front of a mosque about the same exact thing without it being seen as a hate crime. Like, if I were to demonstrate
Yes.
in front of the local mosque that's close to the school, in the same neighborhood as the school, hey, tell your followers in this area not to go demonstrate in front of the school, then
exactly, and it will be some sort of Islamophobia if a group of women were to participate in front of the mosque against the verse in the Quran where it says, "Hit them if they don't obey you." We can do that because isn't it encouraging domestic violence? So why don't we have the right to do that? But it's not fair. It's not fair because, or for example, when you see very young children wearing the hijab, and then they say, like, for example, a 6-year-old chose to wear the hijab, and the dad or the mom's argument that it's her choice. But then, how can a 6-year-old choose to suffocate herself in that manner if she wasn't an indirect way convinced to do it, or direct way maybe? It's just complicated. This is what I meant with too much freedom to inflict their harm in a way on their children mainly. I do believe that children should be taken care of by the government. If the government, in a way, in a country like the UK, for example, there shouldn't be religions for children, any sorts. And when they are 18, they can choose maybe. But it's so unfair for a child to say, I'm Muslim or I'm Christian, or it's just because how can they choose for themselves? How can they, for example, I was listening to an Egyptian lady discussing a book that is being taught in the Azhari schools right now in this age, and it was explaining about what types of meat you can eat if you're starving, if you don't have any other food. Apparently, you can eat an unbeliever's meat, a human meat, for example. Like, yes, but you cannot eat a Muslim person's meat. Can you imagine? They're teaching this in the schools.
I mean,
secondary schools, Azhari schools.
Yeah, it's odd. Sometimes they delve deep into some of these questions that are not only not applicable, but for most humans on Earth would never be applicable. Like, is cannibalism a viable option for survival? And they teach it to kids, and they put a spin on it. I mean, that's not very common, but it happens sometimes. And they put a spin on it that dehumanizes one type of human more than another. It's
Exactly.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that you're not allowed to eat any prophet's meat, but then Muhammad was the last of the prophets. So what's the use of that ruling?
I mean, if I don't even know if I want to say this, but If a prophet doesn't decompose, right, and their meat isn't eaten by the ground, doesn't that mean that they're an infinite supply of energy in
Oh,
some
that's a
ways?
great point. Yeah, this
I
is
just
like
solved the world's energy problems right there.
amazing. Yes, I didn't think of that, but yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get into all these like weird edge cases that nobody bothers to answer because it's a disrespectful question, is what they would say. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, something that I mentioned earlier about the dua al-rukub, the prayer for safety when you ride an airplane. Not only is it forced on everybody equally, but I mean, can you imagine you get in an airplane in the US or in Europe and you hear, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, please save us from blah, blah, blah. A lot of Muslims specifically would be super offended at this. But
Definitely.
aside from all that, like as a child growing up, looking at the amazing engines outside, looking at the flaps of the wing and how the plane is flying, and thinking to myself, wow, this is amazing. Like, how did humans do this? And in the same vein, hearing from the same people, like in my head, the person saying this might be the pilot. I don't know, I'm a kid. But the pilot who's flying the plane, who's a super cool dude who can make, inanimate objects fly, is also telling me to pray to God to save us. So these two things were equally as likely in my head. Just as the plane is flying, we're praying to God to save us from the plane crashing. It's the same person telling me, the same person responsible for both things. So it's the constant indoctrination and background noise that we don't even realize.
I'll tell you why. Because nobody can harm you unless he's willing, and nobody can benefit you unless he's willing.
It's almost
God.
like if you take God out of the equation, it's the same equation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was a fun chat, and I hate to cut it short, but I am trying to get to the last caller before I end the live stream. But if you would like to join
definitely.
again, like I said, I have these streams every week, so I hope to hear from you again on this live stream.
I would love to. Thank you ever so much. Thanks a lot.
Of course. And I'll see you around. Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Suzy. So we have one last caller for today. Let's see if the caller is ready. Oh, okay. That is unfortunate. Suzy, if you're still around, the caller just left, so we might have a few more minutes before I end the live stream. So I will put you back on the live call. Can you hear me, Suzy? Are you there? Okay. It might be too late. Oh well, it was fun nonetheless. I want to thank everybody today. This was my first attempt at using this new platform to have live streams, so there were some technical difficulties I cut out every now and then, and I appreciate everybody for pointing that out to me. And there's a fun little conversation going on in the live chat. I love to see it, so please continue that. So thank you everybody for joining. Next week it's going to be a Wednesday, and hopefully, inshallah, the week after that it's going to be a Wednesday, and it's always going to be a Wednesday going forward. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And special thank you to all my patrons, YouTube members, and supporters. Most of them I can't even name. A lot of them volunteered just out of the goodness of their heart to see this kind of stream happen. And a lot of people have supported me monetarily through these sorts of memberships that are why I'm able to do this today. So thank you all, every single one of you. And I'm just very happy about how well this live stream went. And as always, think critically and think for yourselves.